Good morning. Lovely as always to see you all arriving and your sweet messages of greeting. From all around the world. It's really such a precious thing to come together in this way. So as always, welcoming yourself and welcoming each other from your own space. So welcoming yourself might also include some movements, whether that's just like subtle micro movements or whether that's standing up and shaking or stretching, making some sounds. Yawning is great. Waking up the breathing really helps. Stretching the mouth, the face, feeling the diaphragm as much as you're able to. And then also as you begin to settle into yourself in whatever posture you find yourself in, sensing each of us here. Everybody who's arriving and settling from all around the world. And yet very much in this shared field. It's a very real thing. You know, we can feel it. It's a palpable shared space that's been one of the gifts of the magic of this internet universe. So we create a shared field by bringing our attention and intention together. Feeling each other and feeling yourself. Welcoming each other and welcoming yourself. And so, as you may know now, if you've been following the daily meditations this week, exploring, embracing challenging emotions, and we've explored love as the foundation, where the reminder that it is our relationship to whatever is here. It's our relationships, the way in which we're willing and able to meet our emotions, which transforms. It's not the emotions themselves, it's our relationship towards them, which has the potential to blossom into something profoundly beautiful. It's the growing capacity to love whatever it is that is here. It's not the expectation that we feel love. It's our willingness to meet what we do feel with love, which transforms. And so we've explored the particular flavors of love that come up as we meet different challenging emotions or mindsets, the way in which meeting anxiety with love feels like we meet anxiety with a quality of equanimity, that spaciousness, the ground, the wide lap that allows the anxious mind to begin to settle back into the body. We explored yesterday how meeting anger with love feels like the warm embrace of compassion that gives that fiery energy of anger a safe space to become aligned, so that instead of directing outwards in vengeance, we allow the sacred energy of anger to move with grace in whatever ways bring greatest benefit to all beings. Today we'll be exploring the very sacred emotion of grief. Which really is so, central to our human experience, because as the Buddha taught us, and as our direct experience will confirm again and again, anicca, anatta, that everything is connected and everything changes, which means that we will again and again open our hearts to the truth of another thing or another being. We will again and again love, and again we will lose what we love. We will love and lose. Loving and letting go are even entwined, inseparable from each breath. We receive this breath, we receive the gift of the fullness of life, and we give it back and we let it go. And in giving it back, we empty ourselves to receive anew. So there's a dance here between love and grief, between letting in and letting go, between receiving and giving back. That's really intrinsic to being alive. We wouldn't grieve if we didn't love. But we haven't been very well supported in our culture, most of us. In our cultures, those who have been with us when we were young, inevitably in turn then haven't been able to model to us most of the time how to meet grief with love, how to honor grief. In a culture that's so afraid of death, we have also become afraid of grief. And so when we either suppress grief or embellish it, as we've been exploring over this week, the typical ways that we enter into distorted relationships, imbalance and distorted relationships with emotions is by suppressing them or embellishing them. We suppress grief through limiting beliefs that we adopt, like an attitude of not caring, an attitude of distancing ourselves. We suppress grief through actions of numbing or distracting ourselves, overeating, tobacco. Both have this effect of like literally pushing it down. And we embellish grief with most typically with grief, there's more of a sense of drowning in it and embellishing grief by identifying with the stories of me and my grief, identifying with the stories of what is happening or what happened, that we replay in our minds without direct, at the same time, without coming into the body and connecting ourselves to a home here in the breathing body. So we replay these stories and lose ourselves inside the grief without being anchored to love, without being anchored to presence and sacredness. We can lose ourselves in a replaying of the emotions. So that's the most typical way that embellishing grief shows up. And whether suppressing or embellishing, it means we actually perpetuate the emotion in the system. By pushing it deeper into our body, we hold it in the contraction and collapse somewhere in the body. We perpetuate its presence. By embellishing it, we perpetuate its presence. So we actually hold ourselves locked into something that we're trying to avoid. I find it interesting that in Chinese medicine, grief is associated with the lungs. And there's a sense of when we either suppress grief and contract around it, or embellish it and collapse around it, there's a contraction and collapse that can come into the lungs. It can lead to, when it really becomes embedded in the body, into a heaviness of depression, a heaviness that makes it still harder to move and to act and to release, to really become alive to the fullness of receiving life as well. And so the quality of love which arises when we turn towards grief with love is courage. And we might perhaps assume that courage would be more associated with anger and compassion would be more associated with grief. But when we really come to close to it, and of course explore this in yourself and find out if this is true for you, that in fact, when we hold anger with love, with softness, when we turn towards it in the body and rest beside it, compassion is what arises. And to really turn towards and rest beside grief and honor it, it takes profound courage. Courage is what arises. And we feel that as well when we breathe deeply, taking a full breath, even in the face of grief. When we allow the lungs to fill the quality in Chinese medicine as well that's associated with healthy and balanced qi or energy in the lungs is courage. It's this willingness to breathe in and take in life, to be open to life, despite the truth of loss, despite the truth of grief. And so in our willingness to remain open in the face of grief, the courage to feel this, the courage to feel this, the courage to grieve, actually turns us towards life, turns us towards the truth of love and loss, the truth of the preciousness, the delicacy of each moment of life, the sacredness of each moment of life. And it opens us to a deepening reverence. So when we meet grief with love, when that courage arises within us, we begin to move through life with greater reverence. And in these times of being called to embrace more and more of the whole of humanity, in fact, more and more the whole of the world, everything at the moment is calling us to expand what was once just the family circle and then became maybe the tribal circle and then became maybe the nation circle, to expand our heart to include the whole of humanity as our family, to expand our heart to include the whole of the world as our home and as our family. Our courage needs to expand too, and our deepening reverence for life expands in turn to walk more lightly on this earth, to not break so much as we move around. The reverence is such a profound gift of tenderness and kindness in the way that we move through life. And so we can receive grief as a great blessing and a great teacher to invite us into ever more state of receptive reverence for and with life. So as we come to practice together, the invitation, like yesterday, is to find a posture that works for you. Whether seated or lying down or standing. If you feel you need more support to come into the body first, to feel embodied, to feel the sensations of being into the body, to support your breathing to release, then feel free to begin standing or moving in some way. Very often with grief, for me at least, I'll want to just curl up, to be curled up and covered up, to be held and soft and safe. So whichever posture you find yourself gravitating towards, let yourself be so, so soft, so, so soft. Creating a space where you really feel held, where the body feels held, where your heart feels held, where your mind feels safe, held, enough to surrender and soften. In order to neither suppress or drown in grief or any emotion, whatever it is that you're feeling today, we need to anchor our attention into the body, to the breathing, to the ground. Taking a longer exhalation. Which might be a sigh or a sound. So you release your attention down into the body. As you feel the ground, feeling this earth as she rises up to meet you, to hold you. Receiving this breath as it offers itself to you, the gift of life. Giving back your exhalation. Releasing. giving yourself to the support of the earth, the support of the breath, the support of each other, the support of the sacred space that we create together. As you bring your attention to the sensations of breathing in the body as your anchor, as you invite your breathing to softly move into places of contraction or collapse, the places of protection, inviting yourself to soften into the support that you feel, the ground, your breathing, and each other. To let yourself be held. We receive each breath of life. And we give it back so that we can receive anew. So that we can participate in the dance of life itself with love. So that we can participate in the dance of love itself. We receive each breath with gratitude, and we offer it back with courage. A courage that carries with it a strength like the strength of a tree rather than the strength of a soldier who armors himself. The strength of a tree deeply rooted into the earth, spreading its branches into the sky, connecting through mycelia to everything around, connecting through its branches and leaves to the insects and the birds, to the sun, to the rain. A courage like the strength of a tree, so deeply rooted and open that its resilience stays steady through winter storms and summer droughts. That its branches offer gifts all around. Those branches, like the branches within your own lungs, breathing with gratitude and the courage to remain open to life, even as we lose and let go. And if grief is here for you today in your heart, feel its ache in your body. Turn towards it. Feel where it shows up, where it speaks to you in the body. And breathe into it with courage. Allow it to move through you with tears. Remember that grief's tears are like a river of grief simply finding its way back to the ocean of love. It's okay to feel this way. It's okay to not even know exactly why you feel this way at times. turning towards whatever it is you're feeling in the body, breathing into it, softening around it, and resting beside it with so much love. It's safe to feel this way. You're not alone in your grief. You're held in a web that never leaves you, the web of life, the web of love. Let grief held with love, with courage, tenderize your heart. And open you to reverence. As Rumi said, when the world pushes you to your knees, you're in the perfect position to pray. Staying connected to the breathing body, to the ground that holds you, to this field that we create together. As you turn towards whatever it is you're feeling, soften around it, breathe into it, and rest beside it with love. It's okay to feel this way. It's safe. You are loved. And in learning to love what you feel, you are learning to remember yourself as love. Remaining very tenderly in the body with your attention, with the sensations of breathing, the sensations of the ground as it holds you in whichever way it does, with the sensations of whatever it is you're feeling. The courage to grieve opens our hearts to life, to its preciousness, fragility, to its mystery and beauty. The courage to grieve asks us to fall to our knees in reverence. So that we walk lightly on this earth, so that we reach out kindly and tenderly to each other, so that we don't break so much as we move around. This poem is called Adrift by Mark Nepo. Everything is beautiful, and I am so sad. This is how the heart makes a duet of wonder and grief. The light spraying through the lace of the fern is as delicate as the fibers of memory forming their web around the knot in my throat. The breeze makes the birds move from branch to branch, as this ache makes me look for those I've lost in the next room, in the next song, in the laugh of the next stranger. In the very center, under it all, what we have that no one can take away, and all that we've lost, face each other. It's there that I'm adrift, feeling punctured by a holiness that exists inside everything. I am so sad, and everything is beautiful. Thank you, friends, for your practice and presence. And so as usual, we have time now for questions. If there are any, you can write them in the chat with the word question in capital letters to begin with. A reminder while you're reflecting, if any questions are here, a reminder of the gift of reciprocity of dana to support Sangha Live, to support me, to support this flow of giving and receiving. A reminder too that if you'd like to support me through Sangha Live, then you'll need to offer your dana during this week. Otherwise, dana will go to whoever's the active teacher at the time. Or if you're watching this as a recording at another time, Please do still support Sangha Live, but if you'd like to support me, you can find a link to that through my website. I'll just put the link for Dana in the chat. Thank you, Jane, for posting Adrift by Mark Nepo. I'll also add the link to the recording. Sending you love, John. Love and courage. So something I can add, that with all these emotions, we can't do this alone. We don't do this alone. And so sometimes it's enough to feel the support of the ground, the breathing, the aliveness of nature, our Sangha, our community, our loved ones. And very often we need more direct and personal support. So reaching out one-to-one to a mentor, to a therapist. There are times when, with grief in particular, it can feel like we're at the edge of a black hole. There can be a sense of an ancient fear that we might lose ourselves inside this fathomless depth. And it takes support for us to learn to trust that it's possible to surrender into that black hole, that we can, when we're anchored to love, to presence, to being here embodied in the body, when we fall into it, we don't fall, we float, and we float in love. And that love itself illuminates whatever space we've been afraid of with such light, a delicacy of being that gives birth to so many gifts. Many traditions have spoken about some time in our path traveling through a dark night of the soul. And so there are periods in life when these emotions might come strongly for us, whether that's allowing historical trapped emotions to be liberated and move through us, and whether it's circumstances in our life that bring us to our knees. And these periods of life can sometimes seem to have they'll sometimes have triggers that we understand, but sometimes there won't be full understanding as to why there is this depth of grief, for example. And I found that if we can learn to trust these times and really trust the deeper truth that there is no wrong emotion, that when we are connected, and this really is the essential piece, when we are connected to the body, to our breath, to presence, to love, when we feel safe and supported enough to be the parent in the room with the distressed child within us, to meet grief with love, to meet anger with love, to meet whatever is here with love, rather than either deny it or collapse inside it. When we have that capacity and support, there is something beautiful that emerges on the other side. we come out lighter and freer. We come out wiser and more compassionate. We come out embodying a deeper and wider depth and breadth of love. John, I hope you're feeling supported by the outflow of love moving towards you. And for each of you, there'll be many of others of you who are feeling grief today and feeling whatever you're feeling today, and just know that feel this field that we create together. Feel this field that is always available for us when we tap into it and connect with each other. So there's a question from Frederica. I don't feel grief in my body right now, but there's grief in my mind, thinking about the situation of the earth and the life of beings and the life of beings on it. Anything to do about it, or just feel it like that. I would invite you to really inquire into that that feeling you have that you don't feel grief in the body. Whenever there is grief, it exists in the body. And I completely hear what you're saying, Frederica, that you don't feel it in the body and it appears to be in the mind, triggered by these circumstances at the moment. But what I would suggest might be happening is that you are caught in, perhaps in more of a level of shock at the grief in the mind, which is something that is very shared. And when we're in shock, we actually separate ourselves from the body. The mind is, it's literally in that state of, the state of shock is one of a state of grief of the mind. It's the alarm, it's the grief of this cannot be happening. But the problem with the state of shock is that it's meant to be a very short-lived, adrenalized experience that helps us to survive by cutting us off from our feeling body, cutting us off from our breathing body, so that we can fight or run away or freeze and survive. But it doesn't help us to thrive, because it's through connecting to the body and through connecting to our emotions that we connect to love's appropriate response. So give yourself time, if this resonates with you, to really notice where your breathing might have become tight and shallow, to bring yourself into the body as much as possible in any way that you can, whether that's through movement, whether that's through stillness, or just inviting your attention to come into the body again and again and again, to breathe more deeply, to breathe into the belly again and again and again. And you might begin to feel, and you can feed back to me. Feel free to email me also. Any of you can find my email through my website. Invite yourself to breathe into the body, and you might begin to notice that there is grief here in the body. And through meeting this grief in the body, there is, I hope, we actually grow in courage and more of a capacity to have a more creative, nuanced response to even things that feel impossible in their response. We also have the capacity to sit inside this space of not knowing. I do not know what to do. We can sit in the discomfort of all of these experiences of the vastness of what's being asked for us at the moment. As I said earlier, it feels to me that what is being asked of us is to grow, is to stretch and widen our hearts our bodies, hearts and minds to grow into this capacity to hold the whole earth in our hearts. Because the truth is that each of us individually cannot know the answer. It's only when we come together collectively as one being, as one heart and as one breath, that each of our seemingly tiny responses come to create something new. So let me know how that lands. We maybe have time for one more question. And if there are more questions, you can maybe bring them tomorrow or email them to me. A question from Hannah. I feel some difficulty to fully allow to feel grief. Any tips to open up more? So patience and time, support. Patience, time and support. There have been many reasons and many very appropriate reasons why you will have defended yourself from fully feeling grief. It's with all of these motions, it's never something to force. It's just this gentle turning towards, softening around, inquiring into, and also asking into yourself if when you turn to the body, and this applies to every emotion that I'm inviting you into turning towards with love. When we turn towards and what we find is a numbness or a hardness or a shell or a defense, then it's that numbness or that hardness that we turn towards and we soften around and we rest beside and we breathe into. Remembering that any form of defense and protection is here with love. It's here to support us and help us to be safe at some time in our life. And in order for it to begin to really trust that it can relax, we really need to meet it with love as well, meet that part of us with love as well. And to do that, often we need support. So some form of therapy, I mentioned, I think yesterday or the day before, internal family systems can be a very good way to meet the many parts of us in this way, so that they can begin to soften and make space for whatever lies behind them. So that when I say there's no wrong experience, that also means our numbness and our defense isn't a wrong experience. That too is looking to be loved and looking to be held. So I need to bring things to an end today, sending you courage and softness and love as you move through your day today. And I hope to see you tomorrow when we'll be exploring fear, which really in many ways lies underneath our distorted relationship to all these other emotions. Thank you for your support, for your love, for your presence, and for your dana. Much love.